Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to a shortened version of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Shortened version, what the hell was I saying there? Shortened edition of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Mike Ricksecker is here. We're going to get into everything. One thing I love about Mike, you're going to love him too if you don't know him. Okay. He is like a master on everything. He really is a master on everything. And his hair is always perfect. Always perfect. You know, it really is. I need to know his hair product. I really do. But let's say hello to all of you tonight because we got to warm this thing up. We got Kitty Caddywhack in the gold medal position, Race Fan with a silver, Tim Mothman and his goatee in the bronze medal position tonight. David Grachin, welcome back. Thank you for joining us. Hi there, Paula Fost. Trucker Andrew, nice to see you as we scroll on down on our roll call and go to Mel WD-40 lubing us up for tonight's show. Because you can't talk with Mike Ricksecker unless you're all nice and lubed up. Thank you, Mel, for the lube. And give yourself a little shot if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, you do. Necessary Dialogue, Robert Lamoth and Thunderhead. Nice to have you all here tonight. As, yes, Race Fan, thank you. I will be driving 5 hours right after the 2 hours with Mike tonight, driving to Vancouver because I got to catch a flight to San Francisco in the morning. It's not so much the flight, it's immigration. Got to go through the immigration. Stephanie Kenny Blankenship and T-Bone, how you guys doing? Thank you for joining us. Luscious Jules, nice to see you. Jennifer Beveridge is here. Jennifer Beveridge will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Mama Catherine, there she is. Mwah! I love you, my dear. I hope you have a great night. I know you're going to love this show. I promise you, it's going to be a great one. Kurt M., how are you tonight? As we scroll on down on our roll call, and up next, we have, well, let's see. We got a big conversation going here. Road Flare, how are you? Carol and Mario, nice to see you. Digger Dog is here. Digger Dog will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. We continue on here with, let's see who's next. It's Thomas Rock, everybody. Give him a clap. Thomas Rock. Scrolling on down, up next, we have Kurt M., and we have Integrationing. We have Jeremy. How you doing? Thank you for joining us. Nicholas Burnett, welcome to SOR Chat. Jay Truth, how you doing? Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Pam Harris and Lisa Smith, Undead Jed, thank you all for coming on in. United We Stand, how's it going? Al Garay over on Twitch, so pumped up for Mike Ricksecker tonight. 2,500 strange and awesome push-ups in 7 minutes. And he even took a 1-minute water break. God, you're in such good shape, man. Good job. Give us a flex if you don't mind. All right. Oob to Joe's Main. You've got aliens. Yes, you do. And who is next here? We scroll on down. Boof, how you doing? Nice to have you here. Noble Patrick. There's my man. How you been, brother? East Coast Turnaround on X. Nice to see you. As we scroll on down and say hello next to Bob Thorson. Jeff Steve Garvey is here. He'll hit a home run for you as we continue on with our roll call. Jaquetta, thanks for coming on in. And, of course, T-Bone, thank you for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. So thank you very much, T-Bone. Let's get the other sides going. We're just doing a podcast side. Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are about to get going with author, researcher, television star Mike Ricksecker is here. He's one of my favorite people in this field. We're going to get into everything from Bigfoot to time travel. It's going to be a great show. We're on roll call on our YouTube side as we are about 35 seconds away. Walter Kochabinski, how you doing? Nice to have you here as we scroll on down to say hello to Jessica S. Shogun, how are you? Nice to have you here. And who is next here? I think we're caught up. Matthew Goodcut, nice to have you here. Super Chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget to shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. We're going to get going here in 5 seconds. Throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears towards the little cabin in the woods, where together, my friends, we own the night. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Caribou Con. Get your tickets at cariboucon.com. VIP tickets on sale for our great event, the Caribou, September 18th through 20th. We have an amazing show tonight. Mike Ricksecker is here. We're going to talk about portals, time travel, Bigfoot, and everything in between in the next couple of hours. There is no hour number 3 tonight. This is why we're keeping it in podcast form tonight, because I got to fly out of here right after and go straight to Vancouver, where I got to fly out at 8:30 in the morning. So I got to be at immigration for 6 in the morning. It's at least a 4.5-hour drive. 5-hour drive to Vancouver. So I got a busy time ahead of me. So we're going to make this one quick. Let's bring him right in. Mike Ricksecker, no time wasted. You are literally everywhere in this field. And what I love about you, Mike, and normally I do a long introduction, but I'm not going to do that tonight because I don't think you need an introduction. You are amazing at what you do. You're an incredible author. You put out incredible research into your books, which can be found on your website at MikeRicksecker.com. You've been on numerous television shows. You've been on countless documentaries. And I think you are one of the most level-headed people in this field with zero ego to boot. And for some reason, you like doing this show. So I don't know what the hell's wrong with you.
Well, thank you for having me back, Dave. It's part of this short nerd show, as you stated earlier. And you know what? You have such a roll call going these days. I think we're almost out of time, right? I mean, yeah, I'm impressed. You know, because we go back quite a ways. I think I've known you almost like 10 years now. Yeah. And it's just incredible to see how much Spaced Out Radio has grown over the years. So congratulations to you, my friend.
Thank you. I do appreciate that, because what we do, what you do, what I do, we're just showing the finished product of what we're talking about. You know, we're people, our great audience, are the people who listen on the podcast side and everything. They don't see the amount of research or the time it takes to build everything up. All those little nickel and dimes that add up to big problems if you're not continuously spinning plates and dealing with them. You are into so many different subjects. How do you spin so many plates?
Yeah, I like to say, people will say the struggle is real. I say the juggle is real. I am into a little bit of everything. I like to joke around that I don't sleep much, but really it's just a passion for it all, because to me, everything is connected, whether you're talking UFOs or Bigfoot or ancient wisdom or paranormal activity or, all these other things that are going on, interdimensional activity. It's all connected. And so, what I try to do is just, take a very broad approach to it and look at all of these different fields and see where those connections are, rather than keeping myself in a little box.
As you kind of move forward, do you just choose a topic and see what you like? Is that how it works for you?
I think, there's just inspiration comes along. Sometimes it'll be, I think a lot of times the universe just kind of calls out to you. So, with my platform, the Connect Universe portal, Connecting Universe, all that, the connections, and it's like, okay, where am I going to start with the book series that I was putting together there? And a lot of people kept coming back to me with different questions about time and time travel and these sorts of things. And I was doing a lot of those types of shows on my network. So it was just like, okay, that's the next topic to roll with. And following that, I was going to get into, well, if I'm starting with time and time travel, well, maybe I'll get into like the nature of the earth, because nature of time, nature of the earth. So I was going to do a book called Energized Earth. Well, I was out in Egypt, and
All right.
all of a sudden, it just, because we were doing the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour. We do that on a yearly basis now. And it's like, no, the next book has to be on the Stargates. So that was just like inspiration that called to me from the universe. So it's just, really whatever that inspiration is of the moment. Okay, let's roll with it and see where we go.
What's your favorite topic?
That's tough. That is a tough question, but because I do like it all, but probably, but it's a toss up between the ancient history, ancient wisdom, all the work that I've been doing out there in Egypt, and the time travel. Just the way that the universe works and the way that the dimensions. I mean, time is just one of our dimensions, and just kind of the inner workings of the universe like that are really fascinating to me.
You were someone who I would look at this, and I mean this as a complete compliment. You're like a freaking encyclopedia, man. You really are. From time travel to ancient theories to Bigfoot to these triangles. You once did a television show on the Alaskan Triangle. You've studied UFOs. You've done paranormal investigations all over the world. That's why I ask what your favorite is, because I see a shift in myself. When I first, started learning about the phenomena, it was all about the paranormal. I wanted to communicate with ghosts. I wanted to see what this was about, to try and cure my fear of death. And then when the UFOs came, and I became absolutely addicted to the UFOs. I still love UFOs and ET contact and all that kind of stuff. But I found a real love for Sasquatch.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and for you, where you have so many different levels of what you do, and you've researched, and this is why I call you an encyclopedia. How do you make that balance? I mean, are you always shifting, or are you juggling all of these different phenomena balls at the same time?
It's kind of funny, because when I was a kid, my mother used to call me a walking encyclopedia. So I appreciate it. I'm sure she would too. Yeah, and I've had that shift, because really where I got my start in this field was the paranormal community. And I've been a paranormal investigator for many, many years. I still talk about a lot of those experiences that I had. I'm an experiencer going way back to when I was 8 years old, with a shadow person that appeared in my room, but later discovering through research and hypnotic regression that it was actually an interdimensional being. But I also had that fascination for history, the ancient world. Grew up in Indiana Jones, but then in '93, when the Mysteries of the Sphinx documentary came out with Shock and West and redating the Sphinx. And the following year, it was the film Stargate. It was like, whoa, what's going on here with ancient Egypt? So it took some years, but finally saw the connections to bring those worlds together. And I just look at it now as like the paranormal was my gateway into it. It's just one piece of a huge puzzle. And, the gateway might be something else for another person, like Sasquatch for another person, might be UFOs for somebody else. And that is like the introduction to this, magnificent tapestry of different phenomena that's going on around us.
For the most part, what do you think we're missing about the phenomena? What is something that you think that we don't pay enough attention to?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, the fine details. We see a lot of the stuff blow up on social media, like lately here with the UFOs. Trump is saying, "Oh, we're going to release the UFO files," and everybody's like, "Oh, is it a distraction?" It becomes all about that for a hot minute. Now I guess they registered alien.gov. So
Yeah, both aliens and alien.gov.
Right. So which is cool. And so, everybody's talking about that, but it's okay, what's lined underneath the surface? I mean, that's a big glitzy thing. Everybody's going to be posting about it. I'll probably post about it because I haven't yet. But it's okay, what are the fine details underneath, the things that people aren't talking about but are still there? I think that we need to pay attention a little bit more to those little details.
What do you think is going to be on there? That was actually one of the topics I wanted to talk to you about.
A lot of black lines. So, because the thing is that the government, as much as they're trying to say, yeah, we're going to be transparent, we're going to do this, we're having congressional hearings now, et cetera, it's their way, to me, of trying to control the narrative. They had to finally admit something, because everybody's walking around with a HD or better camera in their pocket now with their cell phone. So we're able to capture a lot of fantastic activity that's going on in the skies, out in the woods, all over. And you can't deny so much of this footage anymore. So they finally had to admit, okay, there are things going on in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. So we're going to put together a committee, and we're going to have these people looking at it. And it's them trying to control the narrative. The thing that blew me away is we're going to create Arrow. Okay, this organization where you can report, different, unexplained aerial phenomena. Except you have to be somehow connected with the government or military to be able to report to it. So if you're a civilian, forget it. You can't report to the thing, which eliminates, the majority of the cases and sightings that are out there. So it's just, yeah, I don't trust it as far as I could throw it.
I think it's going to be very, very interesting. And let me tell you why I'm interested in it. It's because the word alien has been so taboo around the UAP subject. And I'm not a UAP guy. I'm still a UFO guy at heart.
Yes.
Okay. But I remember somebody on the inside telling me one day, Dave, as long as you keep saying aliens, you will never get any respect. You'll never get anybody on the air. You were not interested in that. That is so far down the road that you might as well just cut yourself short right now, because the big wigs that you want to talk to, they're not going to talk to you if you're talking aliens. They're just not going to. And that one hit home for me, because I was like, no, this is a part of it. This is a big part of it. It's not about propulsion. It's not about anti-gravitics. That is a small part of this whole phenomena. That's the human scientist part of it all. There's much more intriguing stories with this. And even a couple of years ago, when we couldn't say aliens or extraterrestrials, it was NHI, non-human intelligence. Mike, they tried to stay away from
non-human biologics, and that's we're throwing out these different terms. Yeah,
pardon my language. We're not on the radio tonight, so all the bullshit that we kind of have to do here, Mike. I mean, it really makes me wonder what is this about? Is this about cover? Like you said, a lot of everybody should be investing in Sharpie right now because we're going to see a lot of black marker on this, or is this the government maybe taking a shot at us? Taking a little bit of shot at the public over this.
Well, that would be a lot of time and resources and money to throw at to say they're just taking a shot at us. Again, I believe they are trying to control the narrative. And the one good aspect that has come out of this is the fact that we can talk more freely about this. I mean, yeah, it had been that if you're talking about aliens or UFOs or anything like that, then you're just crazy, you're a kook, you're a nonsense. But now the fact that they are having congressional hearings and all these other things in regards to it, okay, people are starting to listen a little bit more. People are starting to look up a little bit more. No longer are we crazy and on the fringe. We'll be really interested to see what happens with Stephen King's Disclosure Day, because that's, it really goes back to those early films like Spielberg's Close Encounters and all that, where it's starting to bring it a little bit more to the public attention, even though it was generally taboo. It still got people talking, and now we're able to talk about it more freely, which is wonderful. Even though they're still going to try to control the story, we can talk more about it. But yeah, it is more than just the technology, but that is part of it. There is alien tech that the government does want to get a hold of. There are ways that they're able to tap into resources they want. I think a big part of it is consciousness, that these entities, whether they are extraterrestrial or ultra terrestrial, something living alongside of us in another dimension, they have access to other means of expanding consciousness and connecting with other realms via the consciousness. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of all this.
Do you think that we are going to get disclosure, or do you think that we are going to get disclosure of man-made UAP?
I think they'll try to pawn a lot of the stuff off on that. Like, was it sometime last year with one of the, I think it was the Tic Tac video, where they were trying to say, oh yeah, the video was taken from like 80,000 feet or whatever, and what you're seeing is a parallax, and et cetera, et cetera. So they were trying to come up with some way to just glaze people's eyes over. And just reminded me out of something like out of Men in Black, where Will Smith is like, yeah, there's a swamp gas or reflected off of Venus, and come up with some crazy excuse. So I think we're going to get some of that to try to appease the general public. Like full absolute disclosure, I really don't think is going to happen until we get what a lot of people want anyway, is for some sort of extraterrestrial or other being to show up in their craft, land on the White House lawn or whatever, and say, hi, we're here. Aside from that, it's because everything's very cloak and dagger. Everything is controlled by the military and the government, and those two sides don't really talk to each other that much. I think people think they're one and the same. Well, it's all the same entity. Well, technically, but honestly, they are really two different areas, even though they fall under the same umbrella, and they don't necessarily talk to one another, because the military is always going to be there. They're always going to be around. But the when you talk about the politicians and the government, well, they come and go. You do have some career politicians, but a lot of them are, they might be 4 years, might be 8 years. President of the U.S., you're going to max out at 8. So we're not going to tell him all this stuff, because, the big brass they're around 20, 30 years, or lifetime guys. So yeah, it's, I don't think we're going to get what, when people talk about disclosure, that like all, the government coming forward saying, here it is. Yeah, we're not going to get that.
I want to switch topics here with you, because have you been following this General McCaslin story? This one's absolutely crazy, where General Neil McCaslin just vanished.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't really been following that.
Oh, man. You might want to look into this one. This one's been all over the mainstream news. So General Neil McCaslin was originally named in the UFO subject of things.
Okay.
During WikiLeaks leaks with when Julian Assange let go of the John Podesta emails, and there was the UFO emails with Tom DeLonge, John Podesta, and Neil McCaslin talking about this. Well, February 27th, he vanished from his home, and his glasses were gone and everything. I'm not going to bore you with the topic because we got a lot more to talk about tonight. But it's just interesting. This story is absolutely baffling to me. Like it's like right out of David Paulides missing 411.
Right.
And the weird part,
and that's one of those questions. Did somebody make him disappear? I mean, we've seen really, really strange things over the years. I don't know, years ago, when Pat Price died, in the bizarre fashion in which he did so, he didn't disappear, but one moment he's talking with the Navy and the CIA. Of course, he's been doing a lot of remote viewing into sensitive areas, and then next moment he's in Vegas having these strange convulsions, and they cremate his body before his wife can even come. It's like, what happened there? So yeah, I mean, you have people that may have rubbed somebody the wrong way, and they suddenly disappear.
Well, this guy had a multi-billion-dollar brain, and the weird part of, to add more weirdness to it, his former assistant who invented some alloy to help military projects, she vanished this past summer and disappeared while out on a hike in the California mountains. So he disappears in New Mexico. She disappears 6-7 months previous in the mountains of California. Nobody has seen the two. People believe that, there was claim that they already had a funeral before search and rescue had been told the body had been found. Like, it's a weird story, man. But I guess this is what happens when you're dealing with these top end type of projects that I mean, we talk about cloak and dagger, but you never know, who's trying to get you, who wants that brain. Is it Iran? Is it Russia? Is it China? Is it North Korea or any other adversary out there? Like, I don't think it has anything to do with UFOs, but it just seems very, very different.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're talking about technology, that's whoever has the highest technology is who's going to be in power. And that's so when it comes to like the United States and a lot of their, we don't want to disclose this, or we're gonna black a lot of things out, or what have you. I do understand that a lot of it is national security, and they don't want to reveal certain things. Like, okay, we have this piece of footage, we don't want to tell you how we captured it because of the technology that was used in doing that. So I understand that aspect, and unfortunately, everything gets militarized. So yeah, I mean, it does make you wonder with some of these people, did they start talking to the wrong person, or were they divulging secrets, or what was it that happened? We don't know. We're probably not going to know.
When you look at the whole UFO aspect, you've talked to a lot of people, and the one thing that I love about your work is you're very private. You're not on the public scope. You're a very private person. You talk to many people, have connections in every field. Where do you think they're hiding them?
There are many underground areas throughout the world. Ones that we've built that go miles underground, ones that are repurposed. They could be one of them that we know that they're doing is they're repurposing old gold mines and things like this, digging them out even further and using them for scientific testing. But some of them is so far down that we're talking like old lava tubes and magma chambers that have been retrofitted into whatever they're doing. So it's going to be one of these facilities hidden in a mountain somewhere, hidden underground somewhere. That's where it's going to be.
What do you think we have?
I mean, I think we have a lot of that crash material. You know, when we talk like the Roswell crash, Cape Girardeau, there's the controversial Trinity crash. You know, all this material that's been absconded, and then we get a story about weather balloons and things like this. I think they have retrieved a lot of that material. And again, it might not necessarily be extraterrestrial. It could be something that is indigenous to our planet, but multidimensional in nature.
You're a big fascination or a big research in my fascination with multidimensional beings and other dimensions going on. What proof have you seen that this is out there?
Well, I mean, for one, our theoretical physics show that we have up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions, 0 through 10. So it's, a lot of it is based in science, showing that we do have other dimensions. And, if we take that and the idea that the fourth dimension is time, and we have access to all the dimensions below us, 1, 2, and 3 from the fourth, then any other dimension above us, 5, 6, 7, 8, and onward, would have access to time like we have access to those objects. So what would be living in those other dimensions, other beings, other creatures? Most likely, just like we live in this one, and they can come and go and move in and out of this particular dimension, just like we can interact with everything in the ones we have access to. But the thing that really just it makes sense to me, okay, our consciousness is on that fourth dimensional plane that we call time. Well, that means we are multidimensional beings. Our fourth dimensional consciousness is inside our third dimensional body. When the 3-dimensional body passes, that means our fourth dimensional consciousness goes to, and that's the big question: where do we go when we pass? But you have scientists today, Stuart Hameroff, Roger Penrose, that are talking about that very thing, that there is a consciousness, there is a soul, and it does reside within the body, and it goes. They can't answer the question either, where does it go, but it does go somewhere after we pass, and could be one of those other dimensions, could be something beyond that. If you believe we live in a simulated universe, does it go back to whatever that source is? Quite possibly. So science is showing some of these different things, and so it is kind of meshing that science with philosophy.
What kind of creatures do you think are on these other side of the dimensions?
Yeah, you have a lot of these different types of entities, and we've talked shadow people before. Some of them, not all, but some would be interdimensional in nature. You have some really fascinating ancient indigenous stories, like from the American Southwest, the Hopi and the Zuni. Talk about the ant people and the mantoids, and how they basically came from not from outside the planet, but from here, basically what we would call another dimension. And it's part of their origin story, where the cataclysm was in full force, and humanity was about to be wiped out, and they took them into their space, for lack of a better term, and were able to save them, and then let them go afterwards, after the cataclysm was over and the waters receded and all that. So you even find it in these indigenous stories, even like fairy legends and things like this, when we talk about like the fairy realm and going into a place where time just worked very, very differently. So you find it embedded in these old stories, but this is essentially what they were talking about.
It always amazes me, when I look at, say, sites like phantomsandmonsters.com with Lon Strickler, or Creepy Acres, or many of these sites that really post these cryptid creatures that are so obscure you've never heard of them, or they're only seen once and never heard from again. Yeah. I mean, do you think these are the type of creatures like the Loveland Frogman or Goatman or something like that are jumping in and out of these dimensions? Or even, what about Sasquatch?
Right. Yeah. Or like the Snallygaster in Maryland. It's exactly. An old one. Nobody's seen the Snallygaster in like 100 years, but It's still part of the old legends. Yeah, they definitely can be moving in and out of different dimensions, and you see, along with a lot of these different reports, sightings of like balls of light. And one of the things that I postulate in Portals to the Stars is that a lot of these balls of light, I believe, are the portals themselves. Because when we get into the concepts and ideas of what a portal is, what a wormhole is, even a Stargate is, we always think of like this, giant circle that's standing in the middle of the woods, and you walk through it. And we get that concept and idea off of a lot of illustrations and things that we've seen on the Einstein-Rosen bridge, where you're connecting those 2 points together through a tunnel, and the end of the tunnel looks like a circle. Well, and actually the film Interstellar did a really good job of depicting this. Is a circle in three-dimensional space is a sphere. So what would an actual opening to one of these portals or stargates or wormholes would be is some sort of spherical object. So yeah, I think a lot of these balls of light that are seen with these creatures and beings, and I think those are the portals that they're using. And Sasquatch specifically. So my wife Kate is a QHHT practitioner. She does a lot of past life regressions and so forth. And she had this session that actually is quoted within Portals to the Stars. The client was like, "Yeah, you can go ahead and make this public." Neither one of these women are into Sasquatch like at all. Well, nothing to do with Sasquatch, but yet in this past life, the woman Ellis, she's coming through what she described as this tunnel. She's in the wormhole itself. And when she comes out on the other side, she's in the woods, and Kate's asking, "Okay, look around. What do you see?" Okay, describing the woods. What do you look like? And she says, "Well, I've got a lot of hair. I've got a lot of fur. The big furry hands and arms and furry legs and feet." She's like, "I think I'm one of those like Bigfoot type creatures." So it was really kind of interesting to see this come forth in this past life regression, her having this as a Sasquatch using some sort of portal technology.
Do you think then that Sasquatch, and I'm saying this because it's my show and I have a affinity for hunting Sasquatch, but do you think that Sasquatch is just a flesh and blood creature? Or do you think there is something more, maybe not only with it, but Dogman and Goatman and all of these different creatures?
Well, flesh and blood, yes, but from where? Is it from here? Is it some obscure mammal or bipedal creature that's still walking around here? On the Alaska Triangle, we made a case for there still being some woolly mammoths around. So I mean, it's possible, but I think there's a case that's been made here lately over the past several years, more and more, of this idea of it being some sort of interdimensional creature, because of how quickly they disappear. Again, a lot of times it's seen with these different balls of light. Yeah, people have reported seeing them at the same time as all these UFO sightings and these sorts of things. So yeah, a lot of people have made the case for an interdimensional being or some sort of extraterrestrial. I think people are starting to move away from the idea that no, it's living here on Earth in our dimension. Still could be here on Earth, but in another dimension. Some people talk about them coming from like an inner Earth. And same could be true for these others like Dogman and others. That they could be, here on Earth, but from another dimension.
I have often wondered that, I have seen a couple of things that I just don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
4 of us watched one vanish. We didn't see it vanish, but if it moved, we would have seen it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the pixelation one day. Other people have seen that pixelation. Other people have seen the Glimmerman effect.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like all of these seem to be, related towards the Sasquatch, and yet there's no evidence for it except somebody's word. So how do we investigate that if we don't even know it's real?
Well, and that's part of the challenge, and that's what makes this field very difficult. It's challenging because the physical evidence that you find, people are making casts of impressions in the ground. Well, or they're taking photos of, am I really seeing what I'm seeing in the photo or the video clip?
Right.
A lot of times you have to take their word for it that, okay, they didn't create the print in the ground themselves to make the cast, that, they didn't doctor the photo, or a lot of times it's just simply an anecdotal story. And it's like, you got to take my word for it. The pixelation effect, I've seen that. Hinsdale House in New York. It's a lot of people talk about the hauntings within the house, etc. I found more going on with the grounds, with the land, especially back in the woods, which is, it's all Native American indigenous land originally. And a few years ago now, we were back in those woods and we were seeing this. It was like this giant bouncing ball of light, but it was a bit pixelated. It kind of it was like getting fuzzy. It was moving in and about trees, and it get like fuzzy, and then you get into a little bit of focus and fuzz out again and get pixelated. It kept doing this sort of thing for a while. We couldn't go back there straight to it because it was somebody else's property, and we're trying to respect the boundaries. But later on that night, we're sitting around the campfire in the backyard, and from the woods, all of a sudden, here come these little, tiny pinpricks of light. Some of them were in the air twinkling, some were on the ground. They were kind of morphing in and out of existence. We're down there on our hands and knees with flashlights trying to get a good look. Okay, we're looking at some sort of bug or something. And we're doing everything we can to get them on camera. Through it all, I have like a very short little, like 2-second clip of little blue light. You can barely even tell it's on the screen because it was so hard to be able to capture. So it's like, okay, I don't have a lot of physical evidence for you. There's my story about it. There was Megan Talbert, who was with me. You have her talking about it too. No other witnesses, no other physical evidence, but this little 2-second clip. It's like, do you believe me or not? And that's a lot of times what it comes down to. Is I hear people tell all kinds of fantastic stories, and really it's like, okay, I need to meet the person. I need to talk to them. I need to get a feel for the person, because I know there are people out there that are bullshitting and making things up, but I know some people are also telling the absolute truth of what they saw.
I love that answer. And that makes me want to shift into our next topic, because there's a lot of controversy right now in the Bigfoot world due to this new Catching Bigfoot documentary that's being shown at by Southwest, claiming that the Patterson-Gimlin film is fake.
Yeah.
And apparently they found some new evidence that shows a gentleman with the last name of Heronius who is getting into the bodysuit or wearing the bodysuit, and it's very interesting. What do you think about the Patterson-Gimlin film?
Well, you're talking about, one of our original pieces of footage that, it's been controversial for years. Here's what looks like a Bigfoot walking through, and it was, a little bit grainy footage, and you basically had to take them at their word that it was not somebody walking around in a suit. I find it pretty strange that all these decades later that we're now just getting something about somebody jumping into a suit, like some actual footage of it or whatever. So that, to me, kind of, it smells kind of fishy. So, the jury's always been out for me on that. It's an interesting piece of footage. I've never really weighed in one way or the other if I definitively think it is legit or if it's not. I've always said, well, there's a possibility it's real. There's also a possibility somebody jumped into a suit. But like I just said, I think it's kind of fishy that all these decades later, now something's coming out on this. Doesn't seem right.
I would agree with you. I think the film is way too real. When you've had professional people analyze this film has been scrutinized more than the Zapruder film.
Yeah, probably.
It probably has. But you've had all sorts of scientists from, biology scientists to what's the anatomy one? I'm forgetting my scientific terms here. Been a long day. Okay, anthropologists and others
Yep.
who have studied this field. Disney even had their costume designers try and figure out if it was a costume or not because they would know. Okay,
Right.
and everybody in between has gone through this, studying the size of the steps, the breasts. That I mean, who's gonna? I'll just say it. Who's gonna sew a pair of tits on a gorilla outfit? Nobody is sewing. I mean, we're looking at this at a 2026 point of view, not a 1967 point of view.
Yeah.
And in 1967, nobody is going to sew a pair of tits on this creature.
Yeah, probably not.
So it just
Yeah.
frustrates me.
Yeah, it's in a lot of aspects, these, how do I want to say this? People are always looking for, some sort of angle or what's they know is going to sell or what's going to be, get as many eyes on it as you can, clickbait, right? And we've seen an increase in interest in Sasquatch lately. It was before, 10, 20 years ago, 25 years, geez, that long ago, almost 30 years now, where it was all the paranormal, it was all the ghost stuff. And so you saw a lot of different, videos and things coming out on this, on that sort of topic. Well, now, things have changed a little bit. Now it's more UFOs and Sasquatch. So, what can we do to sensationalize it? Well, let's go back to this film and come up with something controversial on it, because it's pretty much the most famous film when it comes to Sasquatch, and we're gonna take a particular angle on it so we can get eyes on it. It's unfortunate, but that happens. That's multimedia for you.
Overall, you think the debunking gets debunked?
Could very well. Yeah.
Matt Moneymaker from BFRO actually made a really, really good comment on this. I want to read this to you.
Sure.
Let me just find it here. I got it right on my X account here. He said, I read this last night on the show, but I'll read it just to get your perspective on it.
Sure.
Matt Moneymaker, the head of the BFRO, said it was known at the time and since that time in the late 1960s that Roger Patterson was trying to make a documentary about the Bigfoot Sasquatch mystery when he and Bob Gimlin obtained their famous footage. They were from Washington State. The famous 67 Patterson footage was shot in Northern California. Most of the other stock footage was shot in Washington. As with every other documentary and TV show about the Bigfoot subject, Roger wanted to dramatize some Bigfoot encounters using a man in a cheap costume. His wife, Patricia, recalls the use of a cheap costume for this purpose. The long-lost reel that is being touted by these sleazy producers at South by Southwest is just footage of them using this costume, which Bigfoot researchers have known about for years. What this reel shows is obviously a cheap ape costume, nothing like the actual creature that got caught on camera in California. Because of that stark difference, the sleazy producers are trying to spin this cheap costume for dramatization as a trial run for the eventual 67 costume. The simple fact that no one has ever been able to duplicate the costume from the 1967 footage with all of its anatomical peculiarities and massive size has shown sensible people for more than 50 years that it is not a costume. There have been several well-funded and well-staffed attempts to simulate what you see in the footage. All of those efforts have failed quite clearly. National Geographic at one time touted the bogus Hieronymus costume story. He claims he was the man in the costume. then years later aired an episode where the footage was examined with the most modern techniques and computer enhancements and measurement analysis. That subsequent National Geographic program revealed a foot anatomy on the Patterson creature that is plainly impossible to fake with a man in the costume. This latest film festival entry, called Capturing Bigfoot, is just one more ploy in a long parade of sleazy, deceptive productions since the 1990s that have repeated and repackaged long debunked claims because the ploy will still get some cultural traction riding on the enduring popularity of the Bigfoot mystery. It is just a cinematic form of clickbait. Now, I think he goes a little
Here's
bit.
what I just said is clickbait. Yeah.
I think he goes a little bit too hard on the creators of this film. Okay, because the guy who's producing it, his name is Mark. He's been critically acclaimed on many of his documentaries and films. He's very well respected in the field. I think we, much like we tend to put skeptics all in one place, and skeptics put experiencers all in one place without in a generalized context. I think we do the same with this, but I think when it comes to this, and I'm curious your opinion, when you have people who are not from the field, who don't understand the field, it's very hard to get the story correct because you can't trust who they are interviewing or doing the editing or doing the writing of it. You've been behind the scenes. You know what this is like.
Well, yeah, because any film producer, they have a certain story they want to tell. They have a certain narrative they want to tell. Even, the first television show that I was on, The Haunted, the greatest EVP that we had, which was in a really precarious spot where the girl Taliesin basically doubled over in pain, like she just got punched in the gut and fell. The EVP was Die. That we heard right then. They moved that from that really, really dramatic moment when we were doing a cleansing of the house to earlier in the episode as like the reason that we were going to do the cleansing of the house. And it was like, no, that's not what really happened. And, even, they made it out like, we'd been investigating that family, trying to help them for over a year. And they had made it seem like, they did have hauntings going on there for like 20 years, but they made it seem like they reached out to us. We investigated one time. We called out Carl Johnson to have a cleansing of the house and all this stuff, and it was like that's not no. So yeah, they have a certain story that they want to tell. There's a certain narrative. Yeah, they may not be well versed in the subject at all, but they know that it's a popular topic right now. This is what we're gonna do, and they just a lot of times don't know better. The idea that they're taking a known, basically like recreation type segment. So that whole idea of okay, we're going to do like some Bigfoot recreations out in the woods. So we're going to have him get in a suit and we're going to film that. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing that we would do for the paranormal shows. We have recreation segments. So we have this woman get into a white dress and we're gonna put the makeup on her so she looks like a ghostly woman in white, and then we're going to use that years and years later to say, well, see, they were just faking it. Here's the woman getting the dress and everything. Well, no, that was the recreation bit. So yeah, it's kind of disingenuous, of course.
How do you look at you look at things pretty clearly, but yet there are a lot of people out there who look at things that are very, closed-minded, using the emotion aspect of everything. How do you try and stay very generalized and very, emotionally baseless on it?
Well, I mean, I just don't try to get emotional about it. It's like, I've seen enough over the years. I've had a lot of people criticize and ridicule. I just let it slide off my back.
Right.
These days, I think, early on, I took offense to it and that sort of thing. But over the years, I just, kind of figured out that there are people in this world that you're never going to convince. They're always going to deny the existence of anything external, anything what we would call supernatural. It's just that's the way they're wired. They're not going to believe any of it. I used to work with a guy. He would go to the skeptic conferences and all that, and he would tell me, I've had things happen to me that you would call paranormal. And I'm like, well, what do you say about it? What do you call it if it's not paranormal? He would say, well, it's just not something I can yet explain. What that means, you had a paranormal experience, buddy. That's kind of the definition of it, right? But it doesn't bother me anymore. People are going to believe what they want to believe. I know my experiences. I know the research that I've done. I know what other people have experienced. And again, it's kind of, do I have a good feel for this person? Do I believe them? And you don't have to believe me. I'm just speaking my truth, and it doesn't have to align with yours, but it's still my truth.
The reason why I asked that is when we look at the Patterson-Gimlin film, we do see a lot of people trying to, use that clickbait. I mean, talk about the perfect target to try and run up your numbers if you're into YouTube shorts or TikTok or Instagram videos. Is it good for the field that this is getting promotion, or is it good for the field that the subject is out there, or is it bad for the field because now we have everybody looking at it as a clickbait story rather than as a story that many of us have used as a catalyst to the real life Bigfoot?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix because you're excuse me, you're gonna have those people that for years have been denouncing it, saying, well, see, I told you. But you might get some others that because they're seeing it in the headlines, you become curious and start taking a look for themselves. And that's really what I encourage in a lot of this is, don't let, whether it's an article you're looking at or a document, even with my own work, you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take their word for it. Go look it up for yourselves. Do some of the research yourself. So, if I inspired you to go, look something up and you found out some information, great. Same thing with this. It's, I think, and on one hand, it's terrible that they're ripping this apart when it's still, I think it's very clickbaity. But on the other hand, it might get some people to start seriously researching for themselves.
We're going to take a break in about a minute and a half here. Okay. Just, we've been going hard for an hour. We're only here for another hour after this tonight, but your overall thoughts on the division that this little bit has caused when this movie hasn't even been released yet. The majority of people don't know what we're talking about. We are totally reacting on emotion here with the Patterson-Gimlin story. I mean, even what the conversation you and I are having, we're talking about the emotions of other people regarding a film that 99.8% of us haven't even seen yet. I guess it does show the passion that we have for this subject.
Yeah. No, I mean, people are definitely passionate, and you're going to have camps of people, and they'll argue and bicker, and you'll have keyboard warriors down there in the comments of whatever post. You're going to get that. I guess I would encourage people to stop and think rather than unleash all this vitriol. Let's actually think this through. Let's actually view the thing first, before we hammer it or hammer the original footage, or you would hope cooler heads would prevail. I know this is the internet age and social media, people get emotional there, but that's unfortunately the way we've gone these days.
It really is. Mike, we're going to take a break. We're done the 1 hour. You'll notice there wasn't a commercial break at the bottom of the hour, which we normally take. We're just doing a podcast and YouTube forum tonight on Spaced Out Radio because I got to get out of here early in 1 hour. Mike has to get up early and do some traveling in 1 hour as well. Somewhere in between, we're all going to catch airplanes and not meet up with each other. Because where are you headed?
Oh, I'm not actually traveling tomorrow. No, I have I'll be traveling here in a couple of weeks. I'll be doing some filming out in New York. No, I do have to get up early tomorrow because of my project deadlines that I have.
There you go. Hold on right there, Mike. Let's take a break. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. All right, buddy. We're going to take about a 5-minute break here, and I'll just put you in the green room, and we'll reconvene here in a couple minutes, okay? All right, Mike Ricksecker. Got him for another hour here on the show. Put that up for you. We'll be right back, everybody. I am back. Mike, you just want to get going instead of waiting?
Sure.
All right. Let me just remove that. We'll kill the music here. Mike Ricksecker is our guest tonight on Spaced Out Radio. And Mike is an author, a researcher. He has been on numerous documentaries, television shows, and films, including the Alaskan High Triangle, Histories, Ancient Aliens, and the Unexplained. The Haunted on Gaia TV, you've been there, much, much more.
Mhm.
I mean, Mike, you've really done it all in this field. What keeps that motivation going?
Well, we're really just scratching the surface in what we've done so far with our research. There's so much more to uncover. A lot of the stuff that we talk about, that we discuss, is technically theoretical, even though we've had a lot of experiences, we've seen a lot of things, to try to uncover how a lot of these things actually work. Like, okay, we might see some strange phenomena, or we talk about Stargates in Egypt. Okay, what exactly is it that we're looking at and observing? How did these things actually work? So there's a lot more to uncover here, and it's probably not going to uncover it all in my lifetime. So the idea is just get as much knowledge as I can now, put it together, and whether it's a book or a film or whatever, pass it off to the next generation. Hopefully they pick up the mantle and keep it going.
What topic do you think we don't discuss enough? Is it time travel? Is it ancient history relating to the phenomena? What do you think it is?
How all these things are related, really. Because every seems like everybody has their niche, whether it is the UFOs or ancient history, or the time travel. It's really all related to each other, and I think people don't realize those connections. I think if we kind of take a step back and look at each of those and figure out how they're related, we can actually uncover and unlock some of these other secrets. Because I think some of them, it's realizing that they are related, and one can actually answer the other somehow. That's kind of the the big question. Okay, what is the big secret? But yeah, as far as like when it comes to traveling interdimensionally ourselves, or through time, or what were the lost civilizations all those years ago? And just for example, we see evidence of, and I've been using the A word a lot here lately, not aliens, but Atlantis. And that's another one that just throws people into a tizzy. But we see evidence of it there in Egypt and the walls of Edfu. But they were also talking in the text that's around the walls there about Stargates. So it takes you to, wait a minute, you had Egypt talking about Stargates. This is a story about Atlantis. So does this mean Atlantis had Stargates? And what does that mean if they had Stargates? And we're talking, 11,600 years ago. And that numbers like that just blow people's minds. But we keep finding more and more and more evidence of, there were these civilizations that existed long, long ago. And they had technologies that, either were comparable to us, or we're far more than what we have today.
I know you love time travel. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah.
Have you ever in your research met someone or talked to someone that claims to be a time traveler?
Well, I think that depends on what your definition of time traveler is, because a lot of people think that time travel is, like jumping into a DeLorean, zipping off at 88 miles per hour, get your flux capacitor turned on, and off you go. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be that when it comes to real time travel. But you do have those people that claim that, I was part of a military program and I've gone back in time, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe again, it comes down to, do you trust the person that you're talking to? Do you take them at their word? But there are others who have had, whether it's an experience they've had, or they've gone into a meditative state, even astral projected, these other different things, even remote viewing. can get into this realm of time travel, where I believe it has more to do with meditation, the consciousness. And it's just basically you're setting a frequency every moment in time. So I have what I call stacked time theory, where all time is concurrent, it's all ever present. We're stuck in what we call the river of time. But where you're sitting right now, every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen, all here right now. Every moment, like a photograph and a giant stack of photos. Each of those photos, each of those moments has its own frequency. And sometimes two of those moments resonate at the same frequency and they blend into each other. And that's what we get, what we call a time slip. And the past is interacting with the future, future is interacting with the past, and they're each thinking that they're a ghost or something like that. So we've had a lot of these occurrences of these different time slips. Again, I think a lot of times when people are doing things like remote viewing or astral projecting and things like that, they're actually having a time related experience, or some of these premonitions, these premonitory dreams that people have, and they're getting glimpses of the future. And then they wake up, and might be that day, the next week, a month later, and all of a sudden the whole thing plays out. Well, that was a time-related incident. They actually did time travel there. So I think we're already experiencing it. We just don't realize it.
Do you think we have time travelers here right now?
Yeah, I do. I think evidence of that is the Mandela effect, that things have been changed. Now you Google, top 20 Mandela effect incidents, and you're going to find Fruit Loops and Mr. Monopoly and all that sort of thing. Fruit of the Loom. People are not going back in time to change branding. It's too trivial. But I think things have been changed enough back in time, and not even necessarily deliberately. Like, you could be crossing the street, just an observer. I traveled back in time and just looking around. You're just crossing the street, and then somebody in their car turns the corner, has to stop as you're crossing the street. Well, that just changed their timeline and where they were headed and what they were doing. Even if it was just for a fraction of a second or 2 seconds, it's going to change. And it's those ripple effects, like that butterfly effect, that has repercussions up and down the timeline. And so I think that's what's happening. So when we have these memories that are just like, wait a minute, now this was different, and you have all these other people, no connection to each other whatsoever. It's like the ones with the Mandela effect I look at are like the obscure ones. I mean, some of these, I believe some of them are misremembering, but there are some obscure ones out there that are like, wait a minute, you had somebody here in the United States and somebody there over in Germany, another person in Australia, that all remember this the same way. They don't have any connection to each other whatsoever. So I think that's where we are seeing evidence of it.
What's your favorite Mandela effect? Maybe your top two.
My own. Yeah, my favorite one, and it is an obscure one. So some years back, sitting down with my parents for dinner, and we were talking about some of the paranormal investigations and things that I had been on at the time, because I was doing more of that back then. And my mother and I got into this conversation about this old black and white movie that had to do with these. The premise was essentially, it had been World War II. This plane had crashed with this crew, and they were basically ghosts that were playing baseball. They didn't know that they had died, but they were ghosts that were playing baseball, waiting to get picked up and get rescued. And we were like, what in the world was that film? We couldn't remember the name of it. So I was like, I'll go home and I'll look it up. So I went home, I started looking it up, can't find it. I'm like, what? I mean, I can't find this. What in the world? So I'm hunting around. And finally I came across a description of it, or it was some forum that had to do with aviation, old aviation films. And some people were asking the same question. I saw this film. What the heck was it? Because I can't seem to find it. And people are trying to say, well, you're either misremembering an old Twilight Zone episode, which I know it wasn't Twilight Zone, or an old William Shatner film from 1970 called Soul Survivor. And people are like, no, it's not. It wasn't a color film with Shatner from 1970. No, this was like an old 1950s film or something. So, like, okay, let me watch this film. And so I found it and I started watching it, and I'm like, there's some parts of this that are familiar, but no, this can't be, because it's color. Shatner's in there all over the place, and he wasn't a part of it. And so I'm going on and on and on. And the ghost knew from the get that they were dead. And but they did play the baseball. So it was like, that was the one part. It was like, okay, they're at least doing that. And suddenly there's this moment in the film where there's this one guy that was part of the ghost crew. He was a little bit slow. He had been over by the tents. Basically, it was a salvage crew that came, and they were trying to salvage the plane and see if they could find the crew, because they couldn't find the bodies. Like, what the heck happened to the bodies? So this one slow guy, he's over there by the tents, and he's listening to the baseball game that they have on the radio. And he comes back to the rest of the ghost crew, and the guys are like, well, so, hey, how was the game? What'd you think? And the guy was like, well, yeah, the game was pretty good, but I don't understand how they moved Brooklyn to Los Angeles. As if, they had moved the entire city, not just the baseball team, but the entire city of Brooklyn to Los Angeles. And that's the moment it clicked, because I remember that line from when I was a kid, is that being kind of a funny moment in the film. I'm like, my God, this is this film. But how in the world is it so different? How in the world? My mother and I remembered it, old school, black and white, 1950s film, definitely no Shatner. And the ghosts already knew that they had, or they didn't know that they were dead, and all. And we weren't the only ones. Here's these people in other parts of the country, other parts of the world, also remembering it the same way that we did. So it's like something changed here.
My favorite one, excuse me, would be, because I have a sports background, I was a sports journalist for a long time, was the kidney punch in boxing. The reason why I always felt and was taught the reason why kidney punches were illegal in boxing was because the kidneys were exposed on your back. Where, like in lacrosse, you wore a kidney protector. Yeah. Okay. You didn't wear one in hockey because your pants came up high enough that it had like a high kidney protector on the back of the pants. And that was because they were exposed. And yet, if you look at it now, the kidneys are underneath the rib cage.
Right. Yeah. When did that happen?
Right. But I mean, you growing up, where were you taught where the kidneys were? Your lower back.
Yeah.
Right. Or your heart.
Yeah. Or right along the side there. Yeah. Lower back to the side. Yeah.
Or if you look at another piece of anatomy, your heart. Like in Canada, we always, like on Remembrance Day, we wear a poppy. The proper place to wear a poppy is on your heart, on your left side. The heart now seems to be more in the middle of the chest than on the left side of the chest, where I always thought it was, and many others were taught that it was on the left side. Because when you put your hand for a Pledge of Allegiance, where do you don't put your hand in the center.
Right over here. Yeah.
You put it on your left side, because that's where your heart is. And yet the heart
instead it's in the middle. Yeah.
It's more in the middle. I don't get that. I don't get it.
Yeah, which that's even more bizarre, because you're talking now anatomy. So what in the world happened that human anatomy changed? So that would have to be like far distant past to change the evolution of human beings.
I keep meaning to bring that one up to my cousin's a doctor. And I keep meaning to bring that up to him, but we don't talk very often. But it just absolutely enthralls me about the Mandela effect. you do believe that there is something to it.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's
Is it me who's frozen or him?
because you're having those ripple effects across time as things change.
You kind of froze up there for a second.
No, okay. I was just saying, yeah, I think the Mandela effect is our proof of time travel actually happening, because when something changes in the past, it's going to have those ripple effects. It gets erased from our modern record, and yeah, a lot of people are probably going to remember it the way it got changed to, but others still have those memories of the old way, the way it was before whatever change got changed.
So getting back to the whole time travel aspect,
Mhm.
do you think then that there are currently time travelers walking on our timeline?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether they are us, whether they are other beings or interdimensional beings, because remember, time is the fourth dimension. So those other dimensions above ours, 5, 6, 7, 8, those beings that are living in those other dimensions have access to all of time, because all time is concurrent. It's all there in the fourth dimension. So if they're coming in from another dimension, they can choose a moment and experience our world and change something.
Do you think time travelers, hypothetical question,
Mhm.
are allowed to talk to us or interact with fellow humans? Or would that throw the whole time space continuum out of whack?
Well, and a lot of people go down, well, that's going to create a paradox or whatever. Well, yeah. And those changes through the timeline, eventually resolves those. Yeah, I know we'd always try to put rules. I think a lot of our science fiction storytelling has tried to impart rules on time travel, because the storytelling can get a little murky because of those paradoxes. And so, how do you resolve those things? Well, we'll resolve them by putting a rule set on it. Um, but yeah, I don't think those rules actually exist. Like, if you talk to yourself, you're going to blow up the universe or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen. It will have repercussions. It will change something along the timeline, or it could have been something that always happened. It was always supposed to happen like that. That this person that you didn't know was yourself talked to you, gave you some piece of advice or whatever, and you did X, Y, and Z because of it. Or they could have even have done something to mess up your timeline. Now you're going in another direction. Um, and again, those things are going to play out and resolve themselves, but it will change things up and down the timeline. So yeah, we're being interfered with time travelers.
One of the other fascinating topics that absolutely intrigues me is the idea of immortals being on the planet. I mean, this may sound a little bit more biblical, but looking even back in your studies of ancient aliens and everything like that, do you think immortals are here?
At least ones that are living for very, very long periods of time. So to me, somebody that we would consider immortal would be outside that river of time. So I mean, that could be, for somebody that's from another dimension, or even outside the known universe. Um, Time's going to work very differently for them. So that might be immortality, or it might just be maybe an extended lifetime that seems immortal to us. It might extend for thousands and thousands of years. And we have in our ancient cultures, all these stories and reports of people had these extra long lives. You get into the Bible, okay, what was it? Methuselah was like 960 some odd years old. But when you get into like ancient Sumer and ancient Egypt, now you have some kings that are hanging around for thousands, tens of thousands of years, so much longer periods. So to the common person, that's going to seem pretty immortal. So, yeah, at least ones who are living for extended periods of time.
When you say extended periods of time, are we talking a century, 2 centuries, 5 centuries, or more?
Well, we have people living a century now, so that's not unheard of. But yeah, hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, something like that. Something that would seem extended to us. I think it's totally within the realm of possibility. Yeah.
Have you researched who in humanity may do that? Would they have more of a biblical sense? Would they be some sort of deity?
Well, you have stories of like Count Saint Germain, who's supposed to have lived like multiple lifetimes. People reporting him, seeing him, hundreds of years apart. There was, who's the Chinese guy? He was like 250 years old or whatever, because they had him during back in the 1700s, and different accounts of him throughout the years. So you have different stories like that. But then you have others that, this idea throughout the ancient cultures that, that intermingling of the, whether it was the Anunnaki or the fallen ones, the Watchers, who intermingled with the humans and created these offspring that lived extra long. Even up in Alaska, you have the stories, and I always thought that was kind of bizarre. Like up in Alaska, you have these stories of the giants coming over from Siberia and intermingling with the women up there and creating this other race of beings. It's like, wait a minute, that's like stuff like out of the Book of Enoch that we're finding up there in Alaska. It's like, what in the world is that doing up there? But yeah, so you have people today that believe that they are descended from them, and whether they are or not, I can't answer for sure. But you do have those stories that permeate that. Yeah, there are people that have descended from those that do live extra long periods of time.
I haven't yet asked you a fun question, which is, what's the scariest story or scariest encounter you've ever encountered?
Nah. I mean, that would be, for me, it was scary when it happened. That would be when I was 8 years old, the first, real substantial paranormal experience that I had. And it was, waking up in the middle of the night, and there's a tall, dark, shadowy figure in the corner of my bedroom, which today we would call a shadow person. But at that point in time, I had no idea that you would call it a shadow anything. I thought there was an intruder that had broken into the house and was there to either steal something or kill me, because, that's where your mind goes when you're 8 years old. It did get physical with me. It came up to my bed, leaned over, and I'm trying to scream, nothing's coming out of my mouth because I'm just too terrified. And, comes over, leans across the bed, and I'm staring at this blank black face. There's nothing there, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, nothing. Takes me by the wrist, like grabs my wrist, crosses my arms across my body, and then runs off down the hall. And by that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming in my parents' bedroom. And, they're trying to console me, calm me down, and tell me that I had just had a bad dream. But I knew I hadn't had a bad dream. I was awake for the whole thing. And, that incident, terrified me for a number of years. It was just a one-off, never happened again, would never call it a haunted house, nothing like that. And it wasn't really until like later in my adult years where I started like getting some more perspective on it, and, talking with different people, and I'm starting to meet people that had other experiences and talk about these things. And I had a couple of people suggest, well, maybe it thought you were already dead and was putting your crossing your arms like that, put you into a burial pose, like crook and flail sort of thing. It's like, oh, that's kind of an interesting perspective. I'd never thought of it in that light. And so I started exploring other possibilities and ideas. And that's when I ended up having the hypnotic regression to figure out what in the heck really happened there. And we were actually able to channel the being, which was fantastic. And basically discovered that no, this thing was an interdimensional being that was basically, they were on a research mission from another dimension to ours. They were studying humanity, and that one had just been assigned to a room of a human child that particular night. Wasn't trying to scare me at all. The whole crossing the arms was once it realized that that I was awake and it was scaring me, because I didn't originally think that I could actually see it, but I did. It crossed my arms like that, kind of put me in a self hug, and then got out of there so it stopped scaring me. So nowadays it's like I don't chalk it up to a scary incident, except knowing that it terrified me when I was that age. But now looking back on it, it was like, oh, it's kind of interesting. That's kind of cool.
Have you ever had a funny experience at the expense of a ghost or a cryptid or even a UFO sighting?
That's an interesting question. I know I have. I've never been asked that one in an interview before. A funny experience.
I'll get.
That's a tough question, Dave, because I know stuff has happened. I'm just trying to rack my brain right now. Like,
I'll give you an example of something that happened with us a number of years ago. In 2013, we were playing with a spirit board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we were at our friend's house. They had this small little 2-bedroom log cabin type house, and it was heated by a wood stove. And it was 10:30 at night, and my friend who owned the house all of a sudden realized, oh, it's getting warm in here.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks over at the fireplace and it's burning. And so he goes to us adults. There were 3 other adults there, myself included. He goes, did any of you light a fire? No. Goes to the kids that were still awake because it was a weekend night. Did any of you kids light the fire? Because you know you're not supposed to. And they're like, no, you don't allow us to touch the wood stove. He goes, that wood stove hasn't been burning since 9:30 this morning. It's now 10:30 at night. So as we're on the spirit board, the planchette with our fingers starts going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady of the house says, do you know who started the fire? And it goes to yes. And then she goes, who was it? And it spells out me. And why did you start the fire? Spells out, I was cold. And they're thinking, okay, all right, we'll just accept.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know, we'll just accept that one. So
yeah. I did think of one. I got one for you. So, I think it was probably one of the first investigations that I did when I was in Oklahoma, and we're at this house, and there was a child spirit that was there, and we're investigating the one bedroom and doing kind of our normal stuff, and the one guy decides that as kind of like a trigger object, we're gonna play a game, and he has his keys. He's like, if you want to play with my keys, you can play with my keys. And so you put the keys on the bed, and not much is really happening. You might have gotten a couple of hits on the K2 or whatever. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave my keys here. You can play with them if you want to play with them. We have to investigate some other rooms in the house. So we go and we're investigating some other rooms. We're wrapping, and we eventually start to wrap things up. So he goes to get his keys that he had left in there on the bed. They're gone. So we're walking around the house, looking through everything. Where did the keys go? Did he pick them up? Did somebody else pick them up? Did they get moved? What the heck is going on with the keys? So we're looking all over that room. It wasn't that big of a house, that we're going to the living room, the dining, all these areas. We had even in the kitchen there, we had our equipment containers, and we're looking through the equipment containers. And so I'd done that in the kitchen. I'm headed back to the little, dinette area, and all of a sudden there's like this rattle. It's like, what the heck happened? And so I start walking back toward the kitchen and look down in one of the containers. There's the dang keys. Oh, and I forgot to mention, he had mentioned, he had shouted across the room, "Hey, okay, if you took my keys," remembering that, he told the kid you could play with the keys. Okay, if you took the keys, please give them back. And that's where I heard the rattle into the container, and it was like, well, there they are.
That is weird, man.
Yeah, so he took them into the other dimension or something.
What's your closest cryptid encounter?
Huh. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I had. I mean, I used to grow up with the woods behind my house, but mostly it was the dogs back there. Because there was another house that was way back in the woods, and those dogs would always go chasing after us through the woods. Yeah, I can't necessarily say if I've had one.
Even when you were in Alaska going through the triangle?
Yeah, when I was in Alaska, I mean, I was on base. I had shadow people encounters there in the Alaska Command building. Everybody had shadow people encounters in the Alaska Command building in that basement. That was kind of crazy down there. Yeah, there was the moose incident, but that's not a cryptid.
Hey, man, the moose are the most deadliest.
Oh yeah, you don't want to mess with them. No,
Was
I was working a part-time job in addition to the my Air Force job, and my ex-wife had come to pick me up. And so we're driving back home, and we're going down Muldoon Ave. It's a very well-lit street, kind of a main drag that ends up taking you into the downtown area. And we're driving and talking. Up ahead in the middle of the road is this giant moose, and we're getting closer, and she just keeps talking. And at some point I just kind of turned, and I'm like, are you gonna try to miss the moose? And finally she saw it. Slams on the brakes. She does a 180 into a snowbank with the car. The moose goes running off. And it's like, how do you not see the moose standing right there in the middle of the road? But to me, I was cracking up because it was like, are you gonna try to miss the moose?
They look so clumsy and dumb, and yet they kill more people than bears do every year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was horrific. When I was up there was somebody that was coming out of the college library, and but a moose and her calf had been near the area, and the only thing we could think of is that the mother must have thought that just this person walking out of the library, not thinking anything of it, they got their books and must have been a little bit too close to the calf and attacked the person, killed him.
Yeah. They are horrible. My buddy Merle, paranormal investigator, he was on last night. He was out hunting a few years ago, and him and his buddy separated to watch this meadow because they'd been watching a buck deer down there. Mm-hmm. And he heard something come up behind him, and he thought it was his buddy. And he's like, quiet. This is going to come in here. Like, you're being way too loud. And he slowly turns and looks, and there's a bull moose right behind him within feet. And so Merle you have to freeze, because moose have terrible eyesight, but they have an incredible nose and even better ears. So the moose could smell him, but he couldn't see him because Mike was wearing camouflage.
Yeah.
Right. And he said the moose got up to him with about 24 inches.
Oof.
And finally, the moose just kind of didn't like what it smelled and kind of slowly backed away. But he said, Dave, he goes, I've never shit my pants before. He goes, but that's the closest I've ever come. He goes, I didn't think I was coming out of that.
Yeah, getting that close to a moose. No, I would not want to. Not at all. No, you had some idiot there. Again, when I was in Alaska, I have animal stories, like not cryptid stuff, but actual animals. There was a polar bear up there named Binky the bear, and I think the woman was from Australia and wanted to get a closer picture. And the polar bears looked like they were asleep in the cage at the moment. Well, you had basically there were three fences. You had the fence that was there along the path. There was another like little middle fence, and then there were the bars of the actual cage. And basically, this woman, hopped both of the middle fences and got right up there to the bars of the cage, which are just vertical bars. And I was trying to get the photo, and just like that, there's Binky just, reaching a claw through and grabbing the leg and like ripped out a chunk. And it's like, that's why the fences were there. You don't hop the fences to try to get a closer picture of the polar bear. So,
oh man, we have people all across BC and going into Alberta where, like if around Banff, where you'll get the tourists who all of a sudden will see a grizzly bear on the side of the road or a black bear on the side of the road, and they'll get out of the vehicle thinking that, oh, look at this cute little thing. It's Winnie the Pooh. Let's go pet it.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Smoky Mountains when I was a kid, there was a black bear cub that was up in the tree, and my dad stopped. Now there were all kinds of other people that had stopped and were taking photos, and so he's like, okay, I'm gonna get out and take one too. My mother's chewing him out, and he's just like, well, if the mama bear's around, all those other people are there up front. The mama's gonna get them first before me. It's like, well, I don't know if you can actually argue with that.
We had one in my 4 years ago. I live in an area where there's a lot of wildlife. Okay. And my son is outside. His one buddy lives across the street. His other buddy lives 2 houses down in our cul-de-sac. And they were all going to meet out after dinner to go play outside.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden my son comes running in the door, bear, 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 bear. So he literally watches this deer take off down the road, down our street and into the cul-de-sac, which has some trees and then a path going down. And this black bear races on past to go find him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of days later, this bear comes back, and my neighbor across the street was a conservation officer or a forestry officer. So we tree this bear. We just following it, right? We find it up in a tree. I got my boy with me, and I got my dad on FaceTime, and he's at a barbecue, and oh, look at the bear in the tree. And the bear starts coming down, and I'm just, the bear was too young and stupid, where literally I'm like, hey man, you can't come down. You can't come down. It's not going to be good for any of us if you come down right now. So we're going to leave. Give us a couple of minutes, and then you can come down. And as I'm saying this, the bear's like, yeah, that makes sense. Crawls back up the tree, waits for us to leave before coming back down and taking off. Man,
Nice.
it's wild.
Yeah.
Let's get to a couple audience questions because we are running out of time here. T-Bone is wondering, is the Smithsonian the greatest thieves of all?
Well, that's a tough question. They are pretty darn good thieves, but you have, there have been a lot of thieves over the centuries. Of course, there was, everybody's familiar with the Iraq antiquities back in, what was that, 2003, and how that place was just looted, and they knew specifically which pieces to go to take out of the museum there. You've had that through Egypt. There's one just recently there where they stole the bracelet and melted it down. What in the world's that? But you've had stuff stolen for centuries from all over the place. But yeah, the Smithsonian, they like to hide stuff. Like all the giant bones and everything, like they get cataloged, there a lot of times there's a number assigned to it, and then it just disappears. And it was really bad back in the day. You had, specifically, well, the big problem was the curator at the time. I forget his name, but to him, anything that was like pre-Columbian, pre-Christopher Columbus coming this way, it was it was heathen, and we just didn't, count that at all as being legitimate history. So unfortunately, a lot of it was destroyed or just went missing, that sort of thing. I'm mixed on any of the current people there at the Smithsonian, because you probably have people working that have no idea. They don't know where anything is, or they may have heard the stories, but they're just like, okay, you have a number, let me look it up, and like, well, yeah, the number's in the system, but we don't have an object for it, and they probably have no idea. But there probably are some people there that are still holding on to the secrets that have been passed down through the last 150 years.
Do you think this is Smithsonian is as evil as the conspiracy says, that they are holding on to the skeletons of recent giants or even bodies of Bigfoot or Dogman?
I think some of that stuff's there. Now, what may have happened to it is it there in like the secret vault that only a couple have access to, or was it destroyed over time? I mean, it's hard to say. I think there's going to only be a couple people with that knowledge and that access. So I can't necessarily say like the entire organization is evil or whatever. But you do have people from back in the day that set a pretty terrible precedent. And now there's a narrative that has to be held on to. So anybody that's in that knows they're not talking at this point.
How come nobody ever talks from the Smithsonian? We never hear them talking about anything unless it's on like PBS network.
Right. It's very vanilla. Yeah. It's just going to be basic, history. It's going to toe the line, that sort of thing. That's what they do. So it's like, they'll throw us literally, pun intended, they'll throw us a bone on occasion. Here you go. Here's a little thing from the collection. I mean, this is an institution, and there are places like this around the world, not just the Smithsonian, but like the British Museum and others that, they have warehouses full of stuff. Like when you go to the museums, you're just getting a small sample size of what they have. And, they have warehouses and warehouses full of stuff that's been, a lot of it, you just straight up say it was looted. It's like you have like the New York Metropolitan, you have an entire temple from Egypt that's in there. You go to the British Museum, you have these, wonderful wall friezes from ancient Sumer, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And on one hand, some people make a case for, well, if they were left back in their original country, they may have been destroyed by now. We're actually preserving them. Well, maybe, because I know that in some of these places there's a lot of conflict and that sort of thing. But it's their history. Again, with the Iraq Museum, I mean, that place was just totally looted. I get it, but it was their history, so those artifacts should go back to there. But they find their way into other collections and in other museums.
What mystery intrigues you the most about this planet?
Yeah, I'm really fascinated about the multidimensional aspects, the connections in the ancient world, the lost civilizations. What was the world like 12,000 years ago? Who were those civilizations? These, you get into some of the ancient texts, and they'll talk about one cataclysm. Like everybody knows about the flood, and we find that in the Bible, we find that in the ancient Sumerian texts, we find that other cultures and civilizations have talked about that. But you find other ones that were like, well, yeah, there was that one, and then there were others before that. There were other cataclysms. So a lot of that stuff intrigues me too. So I mean, and I know you want a specific answer, but usually my answer is it all. It all interests me.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
We only got a few more minutes here before we have to say goodnight. I know you got to get going, and I got to get going too. Hitting the road, my friend. Hitting the road. What's new in your research? What's new in your books that you want to get out to the world?
Yeah, well, right now I'm working on a Stargates of Ancient Egypt film. So that should be coming out here sometime this summer. It's in post-production right now. I'm really, really looking forward to getting that out there. So it basically doubles down on a lot of my research out of Portals to the Stars and the tours that I do with Muhammad Ibrahim. So we have another Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour coming up really a year from now. It's March 21st through April 2nd. So yeah, a year from now, I'll be flying out to Egypt again and yeah, exploring other places. So we have a tour to Turkey coming up here in at the beginning of September, which following that is a tour to Germany. So doing a lot more tours. And we're also looking at setting up one to Mexico next year as well, which we're still in the trying to finalize all that stuff. So yeah, going to these places, and I enjoy bringing others along. So it's like we're all discovering different things together. I'm researching, gathering information for my books and films and things like that. But we're all enjoying the adventure together.
Do you ever think there will come a time when any of these mysteries that you were researching or that I talk about on a nightly basis, do you think we'll ever find the answers, the true answers to it, not the hidden cover-ups?
Mm-hmm. Yes, some. What's fascinating is we'll get like a little answer here and a little answer there, and really it begs us to ask like 20 more questions after that. Like, we'll get that one answer. We're like, yeah, there's something. Oh, but wait a minute. If that's true, then what about this? And what about this? And what about this? So, and that's part of the journey, and that's part of the adventure. And so the short answer is no. I don't think we're ever going to learn it all, but it's all there for the taking, because going back to time, if all time is ever present, past, present, future, that means that all the knowledge of the universe is also here. Everything that ever was learned, that everybody knows right now, and everything that anybody will learn is all accessible to us. So it is all there. It's just a matter of us getting to it. But in our lifetimes, no.
I don't see it that way. Only because I'm tired right now, Mike.
Yeah.
Tired.
You think we'll learn it all and we'll just be, we're done?
No. There are certain mysteries I don't want solved. And I know that sounds really selfish for what we do. I don't want the public to know about Bigfoot. Okay? Because I don't want it exploited the way the paranormal world was exploited, the way we see UFOs going. Leave Bigfoot alone. You know what I'm saying? He hasn't done anything. And I know it's a clickbaity world out there right now, and that popularity brings other people out to try and find things because there is no education to this stuff. So everybody in the world is a Bigfoot investigator or a paranormal investigator or searching for UFOs at night. And I guess the way I look at it is I really hope some of these don't get solved, because when we see people, whether it's television at times, I'm not saying what you've done, but sometimes with these television shows or what we see with the government with UFOs and ET contact, the way that they're trying to control that narrative, it just takes the fun out of it. Like ufology is not fun for me anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, when you start getting into those congressional hearings and all that, I mean, it's pretty well sanitized, and it absolutely reminds me of back when I was in the military, and it was very, very rigid, and it does kind of take the fun out of it all. So,
and I just
I hear what you're saying there.
I enjoy having fun with the Bigfoot. Mike, I'm going to get you to give a little bit of a rundown of where people can find your work, where people can find when you're going to be on other podcasts or anything like that, because you are always on the move, man. And I just want to make sure our people can get to your information.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got it on the screen right there, MikeRicksecker.com. That's my primary website. So yeah, you just go to my events and tours tab. You can find out my event schedule, find me. So you've got Sierra Vista Supernatural Conference coming up here in Arizona, Parapsychon in Ohio. The tours I was talking about, I have in New York. I need to get this on my event schedule, but we just finalized everything. And have a 3-day series of doing in New York in the middle of July. So you can find all that stuff, MikeRicksecker.com. You can sign up for my newsletter out there and you'll get updated on all of the different things that are going on. But yeah, I'm all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. I got my YouTube channel. I've got my podcast, Connecting the Universe. So all that fun stuff. Yeah.
Mike, I will say a big thank you once again. I always love it when you're on the show, and you just bring so much genuine fun and curiosity to these topics. You really do. And that's why I hold you in such high esteem for your great work. Thank you so much for being a friend of Spaced Out Radios. And I always wish the best for you.
Yeah, thanks. And likewise, Dave. And it's been great to see your success over the years, and I always have a great time coming on your show.
Well, we'll do it again. We're allowed.
Yeah. Absolutely.
We're going to cut this show off a little bit short here, guys, because Mike's got to get up early. I got to start making my way to the Vancouver airport, which is about 5 hours away from me. And I'm going to enjoy a nice scenic drive through the mountains in the middle of the night. And so thank you very much, everybody, for listening in tonight. I apologize that it is a shorter show, but we are going to make sure that you guys have a good time with each and every one of us here. So thank you very much. We're going to call it the night, and we'll talk to you very soon, everyone. Where's that button? There it is. Thanks, Mike.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.